is Nora. I was 21 when this happened, and I want to lay out a few plain facts at the start, because when I tell this story, people always stop me to ask them anyway. I grew up in a small town in the middle of the state. I spent 2 years at the community college there, working the parts counter at an auto shop in the afternoons, and in January I transferred to a state university about 4 hours north to finish a mechanical engineering degree. Junior year, second semester. I had no car. I had no roommate, because the only thing left in mid-year housing was a single. My family was 4 hours away, and my mother called me on Sundays. And I had a job. I worked at the closing shift at one of the dining halls, 5 nights a week, from 5 in the evening until roughly midnight, and I walked back across campus alone every one of those nights. I say all of that because it matters. Nothing that happened to me happened because I was unlucky. It happened because I was a person with a schedule, a boring, regular, extremely easy schedule to learn. They put me in a building on the north edge of campus, called the Lindmore. It had been a hotel in 1927, and the university bought it in the 80s and converted it into overflow housing without spending $1 more than they had to. The room numbers were still brass. The lobby still had the wooden mail slots behind the desk, one for every room, all of them empty, all of them dusted on the shelf, but not inside. I was on the 4th floor, room 417. The 4th floor was only used in the fall when the freshman class overflowed. In the spring there were 5 of us up there in a corridor built for 30. The rest of the doors stayed shut, and most of them had a strip of paper taped across the frame with a date written on it in marker. My first night I lay in the dark and listened to that building work. The radiators came on in the small hours and knocked, a slow, uneven metal tapping that traveled up from somewhere below and stopped without finishing. Wind found the gap in the window frame and made a low, hollow note through it, like breath across a bottle. And every hour or so the elevator would move by itself, and I would hear the cable running behind the wall at the end of the hall. A long, dry hum, then a clunk, then nothing. I remember thinking it was the loneliest building I had ever slept in. That was before any of it started, and I still thought that. For the first 3 weeks, nothing happened. I want to be honest about that, because I think that is the whole reason it went as far as it did. There was no single night where I sat up and understood. It came the way a leak comes. You notice a stain, and you tell yourself the stain was probably always there. The first thing was my mug. I kept one mug on the windowsill with the handle turned left, because the sill was narrow and the handle sat over the radiator, otherwise it got too hot to hold. One Tuesday, I came in, and the handle was turned right. That is the entire event. I turned it back and did not think about it again for 4 days. Then the closet door. It never latched, so I wedged it shut with a folded index card. Twice that week, I came home to find the card lying on the carpet and the door standing open a few inches, and I told myself the heat did it. Old buildings breathe. Then the smell. Some mornings, the room smelled faintly of cigarettes. Not the stale kind soaked into old carpet. That smell has no edge to it. This was thin and fresh and slightly sweet, near the window, the way a room smells 40 minutes after someone has smoked in it. The girl 2 doors down, the junior named her Renata, told me the vents in that building carried everything, that she could smell other people's laundry from things went missing and came back wrong. My hairbrush turned up in the drawer under the sink. The bread went faster than one person eats bread. And then the light bulb. My desk lamp burned out on a Thursday, halfway through a problem set, and I finished the night sitting on the floor under the ceiling fixture. I came back Friday afternoon and the lamp worked. The bulb was not mine. Mine had been the soft yellow kind. This one was the hard blue-white you get at a hardware store, screwed in tight, and the dead bulb was not in the trash. It was simply gone. I stood in that room with my coat still on for a long time. I want to explain something about fear, because films get it wrong. When something impossible happens inside your own room, your mind does not scream. It negotiates. It hands you an explanation, and then a slightly worse one, and it will keep handing them to you for as long as you accept them. Maintenance has the keys. Maintenance changed a bulb and didn't leave a note. I called the housing office and a woman told me there were no work orders for 417. I thanked her, hung up, and decided the request had probably just not been logged. That is what I did. I decided that. 5 nights later, I saw him for the first time, though I did not know that was what I was seeing. I got off shift at 12:40. It had rained, and the campus was that shining black it gets, and I came in through the side entrance and took the stairs because the elevator was slower than climbing. I pushed open the fire door onto the 4th floor, and the corridor was the way it always was. 2 of the ceiling panels out. The light at the far end doing that faint fluorescent tick. The carpet the color of wet cardboard. There was a man standing at the far end of the hallway. He was past the last door, in the little dead space by the old service stair, standing with his arms at his sides, not leaning, not waiting for an elevator, just standing, facing my direction in a gray jacket with his chin down. I said, "Hey," not aggressively, the way you say it to somebody you assume you should recognize. He did not answer, and he did not move, and after a second, I understood that his stillness was the wrong kind. People shift their weight. People do something with their hands. He did none of that for long enough that I stopped feeling like I was looking at a person and started feeling like I was looking at a photograph of one. Then he turned and went through the service door, and it swung shut behind him with a soft pneumatic sigh, and by the time I got down there and pushed it open, the stairwell was empty in both directions and I could not hear feet on the metal. I told myself it was a resident from another floor who was drunk, or high, or as tired as I was. The vent came next. The room had an old grill high on the wall above the closet, painted the same cream as everything else, the slats furred with dust. I woke up around 3 one night because the radiator knock had stopped, and in that new silence I could hear breathing through it. Slow. Deliberate. The kind of breathing a person does when they are consciously keeping it quiet, and can't quite, so it comes out thick at the back of the throat. In and hold and out. There was a small wet catch at the top of every inhale. I lay completely still with the blanket at my chin and listened to it for what I would guess was 4 minutes. It did not speed up, and it did not slow down. It was the most impatient sound I have ever heard. Then it stopped, cleanly, between breaths, the way a sound stops when someone realizes you are awake. In the morning, I stood on the desk chair and shone my phone light into that grill, and saw nothing but dust in the back of the wall cavity, and I laughed at myself out loud in the empty room, on purpose, because I wanted to hear a normal sound. The window was about a week later. I was at the desk around 1 in the morning with the lamp on and the room dark behind me, as a mirror. I could see the whole room in it. The bed, the closet, the wardrobe in the alcove, my own face lit yellow from below. I glanced up because I'd lost my place in the reading, and in the class there was a man standing behind me in the alcove next to the wardrobe, head slightly forward, hands at his sides, watching the back of my chair. I have thought about that half-second more than any other half-second of my life. I did not turn around. My whole body understood before I did that turning around would start something. I sat there, and I watched the reflection, and the reflection watched me, and then the fluorescent tube in the hallway outside my door, which had been ticking for weeks, flickered, and in the fraction of a second where the light under the door changed, the alcove in the glass was empty. When I finally turned around, there was nothing there. The wardrobe was flush against the wall. The door was locked from the inside. The chain was on. I checked the closet. I checked under the bed. There's not a lot of furniture in a dorm room. It takes about 90 seconds to prove to yourself that you're alone, and then you have to sit in the room without proof. And it does not help at all. I slept with the lamp on after that. 3 nights later, I found the prints. We had had a wet snow, the heavy kind that goes to slush by noon, and I came in around 1 and kicked my boots off by the door and went to brush my teeth. When I came back out, the lamp threw a low light across the carpet, and I saw dark marks on it. Footprints. Damp, still darkening the fibers, coming out of the alcove beside the wardrobe, crossing the room, stopping at the foot of my bed. Not to the door. Not from the door. Out of the alcove, to the bed, and then nothing, as if whoever made them had stood there, long enough for the water to finish coming off the soles. They were larger than mine. The tread was worn almost smooth in the middle. I called the campus police that night, and 2 officers came and looked at everything and took a report, and they were not unkind about it. I need to say that because people always assume they laughed at me. They didn't. They just looked at a locked door with no damage, and a strike plate with no marks, and drying carpet, and told me what they had to tell me, which was that they had nothing. One of them asked whether I had given a key to anybody. I hadn't. He asked if I was sleeping enough, and he asked it gently, and I understood the question. I would have asked it too. I bought a rubber wedge and jammed it under the door every night. 4 nights it stayed where I put it. The 5th morning it was against the far wall, 10 feet away. That is when I started recording. I put my phone face down on the shelf above the desk and left it running while I was at work. Then I left it running overnight, on the floor beside the bed, screen down, plugged in. I slept badly with my hand hanging off the mattress next to it. The next afternoon I sat in the library with headphones on, at a table by the window, in daylight, surrounded by people. I want you to picture how safe that is. Vending machines, somebody's laptop ban, a guy asleep on a textbook 2 tables away. The first 2 hours are nothing. Radiator, my own breathing, a car outside. At 2:41, the door opens. You can hear all of it. The deadbolt turning, which I had thrown. The handle, that low groan the door made past halfway, which I knew so well I could have picked it out from another floor. Then it closes, and the latch is eased into the frame by hand so that it does not click. You can hear his palm on the wood, controlling it at the tiniest creak of pressure. Then footsteps. Soft, rubber soles dragging on old carpet, not sneaking, just quiet. The walk of a man there's a stretch on that recording of nearly 9 minutes where the only sound is fabric. His jacket. That slow rasp of a sleeve against his side. He was standing over my bed for 9 minutes, and the microphone was on the floor about 18 inches from my head. So what you hear is exactly what was above me. At some point, he crouched down. You can hear his knee pop and his breath go out through his nose. Close, very close. That same thick catch at the top of it that I had heard through the vent. And then he hummed 2 notes under his breath, badly, the way a man hums when he is doing something with his hands and not thinking about it. Then he coughed, once into his sleeve, muffled, and immediately went still, and did not move again for a long time. And I could hear him listening to me sleep to find out whether the cough had woken me. That was the first moment in 3 months that I understood he could make mistakes. Near the end, there is a small metallic sound. Something dropped from a pocket and hit the carpet edge on, and rolled that flat, wobbling ring a coin makes before it goes flat. It rolled under my bed. You can hear him go down on his hands and knees, and reach and not find it, and stop, because the reaching was making noise. And then, very quietly, close to the floor, close to where my ear was, a man's voice said, "It's all right." Not angry, not threatening, a little tired, the way you say it to a child who's kicked their blankets off. He left at 3:29. I took the headphones out and sat in that library. I could not feel my hands. Then I went back to my room in broad daylight, with the door propped open, and I got down on my stomach and reached under the bed, and along the baseboard, my fingers found it. A brass token. Not a coin. A laundromat token, worn smooth on one face, stamped on the other with the name of a coin laundry, in a town I had never been to. I did not touch it again. Police came with an evidence bag, and the officer's whole manner changed when he saw it, and he stopped calling me ma'am in that patient, humoring way. They still could not find how anyone was getting in. There was no damage. All 4 master keys were accounted for. They told me to stay somewhere else, and I stayed on a friend's couch for 6 days, and slept 11 hours the first night, and woke up convinced I had made all of it enormous in my head. I went back on a Thursday, because my notes were there, and I had an exam, and because part of me still believed that if I behaved normally, the world would agree to be normal. I locked the deadbolt. I put the chain on. I braced a chair under the handle. I left the lamp burning and lay on my side facing the door, watching the strip of light under it for a shadow to break it. Nothing came through the door. At around 3, I heard wood dragging on carpet behind me. Slow. A few inches, then a pause, then a few more, with a fine, gritty sound underneath it, where the feet scraped the fibers. The wardrobe in that room was original to the hotel. It filled an alcove on the wall my bed backed against, and it was too heavy for one person to move, which is why nobody had moved it in 40 years. I turned over and watched it come away from the wall. There was a gap opening behind it. The air that came out of it was colder than the room, and it smelled like cigarettes and wet concrete, and I felt it move across my face. I got off the far side of the bed and into the bathroom and pressed the button lock, which was a hollow interior door a determined child could have gone through, and I sat on the tile with my back against it and my heels braced on the base of the sink and called for help in a whisper. I heard him come around the bed, soles dragging. He stopped at the desk. He picked something up and set it down again, softly. Then he came to the bathroom door and stood there, and I heard that breathing on the other side of it, 6 inches behind my head, slow and wet and close enough to fog the wood. He did not try the handle. He said, "You're all right." Then he walked away, and I heard the mattress take his weight, and I understood that he had sat down on my bed to wait. He waited 14 minutes. I know, because I was watching the call timer. He waited until there were voices in the corridor, and a fist hit the door of 417, and then the wood dragged again, and then nothing. They found the connecting door. The Lindmore had been a hotel, and hotels have rooms that open into each other. When the university converted it, they screwed the connecting doors shut and painted them over, and in most rooms they put furniture in front. On my side, the wardrobe hid it completely. On the other side, in 419, which was not a student room but storage, sacked with surplus mattresses and broken desks, someone had taken out the screws, replaced them with shorter ones, and filed the paint out of the seam so the door would swing without a sound. Behind a wall of mattresses in 419, they found where he had been living. Blankets, a camp stove, 4-gallon jugs of water, a hot plate with a fork standing in it. He had been using the 4th-floor showers, which the university stopped cleaning in January because nobody was supposed to be up there. They found my hairbrush. They found the dead light bulb from my lamp wrapped in a sock. They found a notebook that was not a diary and not a thread. It was a schedule. The times I left, the times I came back, which nights I closed the dining hall, what I ate, when I did laundry. It was written the way you write notes for a job. The entries went back years in different pens with different room numbers. The token is what got him. It came from a coin laundry 40 minutes north, and he was arrested inside it 11 days later, folding his clothes. He had worked one summer for a campus conference housing 6 years before, cleaning rooms between events. That is where the key came from. Nobody was ever able to establish how much of those 6 years he had spent inside that building. He was, by every account I ever heard, an unremarkable man. I moved out that weekend with my father and 2 of his friends. It took 90 minutes. I finished the degree 2 states away, and for a long time I told people I transferred for the program. I am fine now. I want to say that because I walked out of this, and plenty of people in this situation don't. But I live in a ground floor apartment I have been in for 4 years, and there is a bookshelf in the bedroom that was here when I moved in. It is bolted to the wall. The landlord said it covers a service door from when the building had a different layout, sealed decades ago, nothing behind it. I have never moved that shelf. What I do instead is this. On the 1st of every month, I fold a strip of paper and slide it into the seam where the shelf meets the wall, low down near the floor where you would not notice it unless you knew. And on the 1st of the next month, I check that it is still there. I have never told anyone why. Not my husband. Not the landlord. For 3.5 years, it was always exactly where I put it. Last February, I came home and found it lying on the carpet, and I stood in that doorway with my coat still on, and I heard myself say out loud that the heat must have done it. Old buildings breathe. That was the sentence I used the very first time, in 417, about a closet door. I know precisely what it is worth. The paper has been back in the seam since March. I check it on the 1st of every month, and every month it is still there, and for about 10 seconds I feel relief. Then I remember that a man lived 4 feet from my head for 3 months, and only ever made one mistake, and that the only reason I know he made it is that he dropped